question that this bill be agreed to in principle.
Ms. Lauder.
Mr Assistant Speaker, I rise today to speak about the Domestic Animals Legislation Amendment Bill 2018, and can I say at the outset that we will be supporting this bill today. The amendment bill amends the Domestic Animals Act 2000 and the Domestic Animals Regulation 2001 and makes amendments to the Domestic Animals Racing Greyhounds Amendment Act 2017 to align amendments made to the legislation with respect to racing greyhounds and dangerous dogs, and to allow issue of fines by stating or reframing offences as strict liability offences. On the issue of greyhounds, my colleague Mr Parton will talk to those issues about the management of greyhounds, but I do note here the complexities introduced by the government's need to include provisions for one class of dogs, that is greyhounds, which unnecessarily complicates the proposed legislation. We are pleased that the government still recognises the need for significant improvements in ACT dog legislation, given the relentless efforts made on this issue by my late colleague Steve Dospot. Mr Dospot, along with all of us on this side, recognised the urgent need for serious attention to be given to improvements in the legislation regarding the management of dogs. The legislation presented by the government and passed last year was clearly not quite adequate, resulting in the need for this amendment bill today. And the bill doesn't address our continued concern about the level of discretionary power in dealing with dangerous dogs. The bill imposes greater restrictions on all dog owners for a variety of lesser matters, including keeping an unregistered dog, keeping a registered dog by a person who's not the registered keeper, the registered keeper failing to tell the registrar of a change of address, the registered keeper failing to tell the registrar of change of address of where the registered dog is kept, keeping a dangerous dog except in accordance with a dangerous dog licence, having an unmuzzled dangerous dog in a public place, having an uncontrolled dangerous dog in public place, taking a dog into a prohibited area, taking a dog into a prohibited place, not restraining a dog on someone else's private premises without permission, not removing faeces, having a female dog on heat in a public place. The bill does introduce strict liability for a range of dangerous dog-related matters and a range of lesser issues. However, the bill only partially addresses the issues that we and many of the community felt are needed to address and deal with the menace of dangerous dogs. On the issue of discretion, the Scrutiny of Bills Committee called on the Minister to respond as to why it's considered appropriate for possible conditions to be set out in regulations or at the discretion of the registrar. And the bill does attempt a difficult job of trying to patch a whole lot of different amendments together in what is already a structurally clumsy Domestic Animals Act. The Act really requires a complete rewrite. We said this last year when my colleague Mr Dospot was working on it, and we say it again today. But the government has been reluctant for years to address the serious and growing issue of dangerous dogs in Canberra. And the government and we as a community have had to deal with the tragic results of this negligence. The government has been somewhat dragged kicking and screaming to make changes to dog legislation, and I again acknowledge the efforts my late colleague Mr Dospot made in relentlessly holding the government to account on improved dog legislation. Implementation of this new Act will need to be monitored and future changes are likely. Despite these comments made above, we're pleased to support this bill in the hope that it will bring further structure to the issue of dangerous dogs, and I would like to thank the Minister for her work and that of her directorate in putting together this bill, which, as I've already said, is a bit of a patchwork, but we are moving down the path of addressing the community's concerns about dangerous dogs. With that in mind, we're happy to support this bill today.
Question.